Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk About a House. I'm Todd.
I'm Juana.
Okay, today is a national real estate update. Juana, what we're going to talk about is the amount of money that's out there that people have. We have all the numbers. And for purchasing real estate potentially, like this, we're just going to show how much cash people have, because one of the things that I hear quite a bit are, hey, nobody has money, nobody can afford a 6%. I mean, oh my God, 6% interest rate. That you can't buy a house. Like, people can't afford that. So what we're going to do, we'll talk about this article. We'll go through 4 or 5 slides that we have, and we'll talk about it with people.
Okay.
That sound good? Okay. Anything before we get started?
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy everything. Okay. Here's the article. U.S. household views of finances are brightest since early 2020. We have a chart, but I will first read the first thing from the first paragraph from the article. Okay, nearly 38% of consumers foresee being somewhat or much better off, according to data from the Financial Reserve Bank of New York. This is when they ask people, how do you feel you'll be a year from now? Mm-hmm. It's the 1 year expectation, right? Mm-hmm. Percentage of people who anticipate a worse financial situation, meanwhile, dropped to the lowest level since May 2021. 42% of people expect conditions to remain roughly the same. So 42% the same, 38% better. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's 80% of people. 20% obviously said they'd be worse off in a year. Why is that important with purchasing homes, given that you can't go to a lender and say, I have so much optimism, I would like to use it to buy a really nice house?
So the optimism is actually really important because people act on that.
Okay.
So the fact that 80% of people feel that it's good, that their lives are good, going to be good, or going to be great, that's important because people act on that. So people will they will engage in economic activity based on that sentiment.
Okay, so here's the actual chart. This is the financial optimism. This was measured in November. Of course, this is measured right after the election. You can see there's a spike there where it went from like 29 up to 38%. That's a pretty big improvement in a month, right? But if you look at this chart, it looks like the long-term average is maybe 35% of people. You know, for a while from 2016 to 2020, it was things were going pretty good. People thought things were going to keep going pretty good. And then, of course, you have the 2020 nonsense and the last 4 years, which have kind of been a mess. And you can see how bad optimism has been the last 4 years. And actually, at one point, beginning of 2022, interest rates started going up, was at 20. It's probably the lowest it's ever been since, I don't know how long they've been recording this, but at least for a decade. Mm-hmm. So big spike there. Now, let's talk about this couple things, Juana. You can't get a loan with optimism. But there's about 140 million houses in the U.S., right? And there's 360 million people. Now, next year, only about 4 or 5 million people will buy a house because that's the number of homes that will. Basically, everything that comes up for sale pretty much will transact, right? Because there's this pent-up demand. If we have 360 million people in the U.S., which is how many we have, and we only have 4 or 5 million, that's like 1.5% of people will be buying a house next year. Okay? Does everybody need to be able to buy a house in order for homes to actually sell?
So no, everyone does not need to be able to buy a house or want to buy a house because only 1.5% of the population will purchase a house. And to kind of backtrack a little bit, you asked if you can use your optimism to get a loan. And the short answer was, well, sort of, because without that, you're not even trying, right?
Right.
So if you don't believe that you might be able to, so that's optimism, then you're not even going to try. So optimism, I think, is necessary to go out there and look to participate in the economy by purchasing a home or doing other things.
I'm going to put up this first chart here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 3 elements where people have money sitting. Okay, this first one, checking accounts. This is just checking accounts. Now, these numbers are in that number over there. This is 4,292,000. That's millions. It says it's in millions. So millions of millions is trillions. Okay, 1,000 million is a billion. This is trillions. People had about, pre-pandemic, about $1 trillion in their checking accounts. Mm-hmm. Household checking accounts. Mm-hmm. That's what this is. Okay. Today, there's 4.3 trillion in household checking accounts. There's 4.3 times as much money.
Which speaks to inflation, right? Because this is what's happened is when you have more money chasing fewer goods, and that is part of this.
Yeah, but it's not 4 times more. It's
no.
What's happened? Why are people sitting on a bunch of cash?
So they're sitting on a bunch of cash because they haven't been doing anything with it, right? They haven't been purchasing homes, they haven't been purchasing vehicles, they haven't been purchasing things because it started out because of the uncertainty with, the event that shall not be named,
yep.
and then it turned into an uncertainty regarding interest rates, and then it was the election. So people have had all these reasons that they felt were good reasons to not participate in economic activity as far as high-ticket items like a home or a vehicle.
Let's look at this next one. Now, this is also households, savings, and what's called a time deposit. Time deposit is something known as a CD. Mm-hmm. That's when you go to your bank and you say, I want to put my money in a 6-month CD. It's called a time deposit. You can see this number has definitely risen, but 10 years ago, this number was at about 6 trillion. Today, it's about 9.5 trillion. So there's more people have more money in their savings deposits. So we're now already at about 15 trillion mm-hmm. or so, maybe 14 trillion. And then we have this other one, money markets. Mm-hmm. This is very interesting, Juana. Prior to the thing that should not be named, you can see back there we were running at about 1.6 mm-hmm. trillion in money markets. Money markets back then probably paid 0.2 or 3%. They didn't pay very much. They were just a place to park cash mm-hmm. and not have it go down. You didn't want to put it in something that would go down. Today, 3.8 trillion. You can see the trajectory of this. Mm-hmm. A lot of money flowing here. Of course, right now, there's some of these money markets pay 4.7 to 5.3% for mm-hmm. I would call risk-free. It's government bonds, things like mm-hmm. that, right? Okay. Do you believe, and I'm not trying to say anything specific about the election or whatever, but do you believe that the optimism mm-hmm. combined with all this cash is going to have any effect on the real estate market?
So that and time.
Okay.
So the time factor cannot be overestimated. And what I mean by that is there's been this pent-up demand for a long period of time now, and people have had life events, they've had births, deaths, marriages, divorces, whatever. And so all those life events combine to cause people to engage in purchasing a home, right? Because whatever their living situation is no longer works for them. So that's really important. That really can't be overestimated. The other thing is, as interest rates start to come down, it becomes more palatable, right, for people to not only say, hey, this home no longer fits for me, but it's been long enough, the interest rates aren't that bad, we're moving forward. And lastly, the more time passes, the fewer people are going to have those 3% mortgages. So the more people will be in the bucket of the 6 to 7% mortgages. So whatever the mortgage rates are doing, it won't be such a huge shift for them.
The 2 to 3% mortgage people have only been in their mortgages for 4 years. Mm-hmm. Okay. Everybody I've talked to that has a 2.5 or whatever percent mortgages told me they're never selling the house because they don't want to extinguish the mortgage.
Right, but those mortgages, you may as well consider those the same as homes that are paid off. Okay,
because their payment is, why is that?
Well, because their payments are so low, it's basically free money because they're paying either par with inflation or sub-inflation interest. So you may as well consider those paid off. And in the same vein that you said that these people are saying, hey, I'm never selling this, and they may not. They may borrow against the equity in that property to go do something else, but maybe that they won't extinguish that loan by selling the property.
If I told you today, I would give you could borrow money at 1%, mm-hmm. okay? We'll just arbitrage this really easily.
Yeah.
But and you had to tell me right now how much you're going to take. What number would you put in? How much would you borrow? If it's free, like, no, we're not doing background check. We're not doing credit check. I'm just going to give you the money, and you just you're going to pay 1%. How much would you take?
However much you got, and then some.
Okay.
There really isn't a limit, because if you're loaning it to me at 1%, I can do better no matter what I do with that money.
So if it was $1 trillion,
if it was a Googleplex of money, I mean,
I don't know if there's that much money.
But my point is that whatever that amount was, I would borrow all of it, because I know that I can make more money on it.
Okay, the bottom line is this. There are people who are going to struggle to buy a house. Mm-hmm. It's going to take more money than a rent payment. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be able to put that much down. They want to get in the game. Mm-hmm. The people that you are working with, for the most part, they do not have the issue of, oh my gosh, I don't think I can afford this. They're buying multi-million dollars for cash.
So it's not an affordability issue, but it is still a value issue.
Okay.
And those are two separate things. Mm-hmm. So affordability means that you are constrained by a certain amount of money, but value means that you're looking at a good or a service and you're saying, is that worth this amount of money? So just because they're not constrained by the amount of dollars does not mean that they necessarily see value in everything that's out there.
Okay,
and that applies to every price point, regardless of, whether it's a $500,000 house or a $5 million house.
We have investors who are buying $400,000 houses, mm-hmm. right? They put renters right. in them. They're either paying cash or they're putting some money down and getting a loan. But their plan is that in 5 years, we did the video where mm-hmm. we saw the estimate for Vegas was home prices go up 12% in the next year. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's what they're sort of counting on. Mm-hmm. They're sort of counting on this continued appreciation. And how does this affect somebody who is not super rich, mm-hmm. who makes $60,000, $70,000 a year, but instead of putting $500 away in a savings account, they'll put that toward a mortgage mm-hmm. and then go ahead and buy a house? Like, how does that? What should they be thinking, knowing that? And I did the math. There's $17 trillion mm-hmm. that can basically be pulled out almost at any time mm-hmm. and spent to buy houses. It's a lot of money. That's literally, they could buy every house that comes on the market for the next 8 years without originating a mortgage. Mm-hmm. By the way, the mortgage industry would hate that if that happened. They would basically disappear if no one got a mortgage for 8 years. Do you think that money it's going to come back into the economy? Do you think most of this has happened, more than half of this has happened in the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. Do you think this optimism, because this is what I'm hearing from people. Mm-hmm. Guys are calling me going, I've decided to start a business, mm-hmm. like in the last 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. I've decided that there's going to be less regulation. There's going to be more government efficiency. There's going to be maybe lower taxes. There'll be more incentives for me as a business person. I just won't get hammered. Mm-hmm. I'm going to now start the business I always thought I was going to start. Mm-hmm. Do you think that optimism is going to, my contention is this spring will make the last 4 years look like, a normal market. I think people will be freaking out even with 5%, plus interest rates.
Right. So I've said it before. I expect the spring to be extremely busy and energetic. I think that buyers will find that they need to put their best foot forward and compete when the right house comes on the market for them. Mm-hmm. I think sellers will benefit from that. No, I don't think that sellers are going to be able to gouge buyers, because again, it goes back to value. Okay, and that's part of the reason I talk about that, is because the value has to be there. So people who say, well, I'm gonna, my house is worth, $700 and I'll put it on the market for $800 in case somebody wants to come along and pay me that. It's like, well, it doesn't work like that. It really doesn't. What it works like is value. People look at everything that's available and they say, well, does this match the amount of money that they're asking? Is the value there? So sellers will not be able to gouge buyers. Buyers will need to be very, very well versed in how to present their offers to sellers, meaning that they'll have to make a reasonable offer,
Okay.
not just monetarily, but on terms that are attractive to the seller, and be able to perform. Which is not a new thing. It's just that there's going to be a lot less tolerance for buyers who are looking for deals, for buyers who are not able to perform on time. Those buyers are not going to have a good spring. Buyers who are serious are going to have a good spring. They're going to be able to purchase a home that is the right home for them, because I expect more homes will come on the market.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. I think there'll be some people who decide to sell for whatever reason. They've just had it and they've reached their breaking point of, whatever. Some
Right.
people, some of the people selling do own their homes free and clear. They're just moving the cash, so they don't really care that they're losing out on an interest rate.
Right.
They're just like, I'm just moving the cash from one market to another, or I'm going to buy a bigger house and I need to get the cash to make that happen.
Or they're going to downsize and retire, or whatever. Look, everybody's got their reasons, and whatever reasons they have, they are the right reasons for them.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right.
So any questions, any feedback, please put them down in the comments. We appreciate them. Please remember to like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the video, and if you're interested in buying or selling a residential property or a commercial property, please go ahead and reach out to us, and we would be happy to help you if it's here locally, and if it's not, then we'll connect you with a great agent anywhere that your property is located. And we'll see you on the next video.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.